Right, team. First of all, did we enjoy that one? I would put money on the fact you probably did enjoy that one. What a Grand Prix that race evolved into. First half, to be fair, a little bit stale. Wasn't the best. Strategy was the aim of the game. We had a bit of cat and mouse between Red Bull and Mercedes, and it was nice to see and to think about next season that potentially going into each Grand Prix we could have 3 different teams going for the race win, which I've got no complaints about, but racing was lacking just an icky bit, if that makes sense. Spoilers ahead, but if you haven't noticed, there's a few penalties looming in the world of Formula 1, and because it's late, we're doing things a little bit differently today. We've been doing things a little bit differently all weekend, so I'll put it down to the fact I'm trialling things for next season. That's not the actual reason. But with penalties looming, doing graphics is going to be an absolute pain because constantly positions are going to be changing, championship tables are going to be changing, constructors, drivers, it's all a bit of a mess. So what I'm going to do today, folks, graphics will be a little bit different on your screen. Not much different. I think most of you wouldn't even notice if I hadn't pointed it out. So I'm going to go through the provisional race classification with the Carlos Sainz Lewis Hamilton switch and go from there. Hopefully that's okay with you all. If it's not, my bad. Apologies. Shall we crack on with the race review? Yes, is what you're saying. So, spoilers ahead, your race winner, Max Verstappen. And you know what, usually I go through the race order, then do a bit of a breakdown, but I'm just going to go through at my own pace. Might be a bit of a ramble, but hey, we've got a Grosjean rant at some point in this video, I am sure. So strap yourselves in, let's go. Max Verstappen. What a turnaround 12 months has been. However you feel about the Ocon-Verstappen scenario, saga, at last year's Brazilian Grand Prix, a little bit of that you have to put down to Max Verstappen's immaturity. Even if you're in the camp that none of it was Verstappen to blame, there was a little bit where other drivers would have got completely out of the way. Just that's already upset some people. I'm sorry, but you can see what I mean, that the maturity of Max over these 12 months has been insane. This season has definitely been his best season in Formula 1, in my eyes, and I think a lot of the Orange Army would agree with me. Perhaps the second half of the season hasn't been as impressive as the first, but I think Brazil was a real reminder of what this guy is capable of, and it was one of those races where even though Mercedes' strategy seemed to be playing off in the early stages, Verstappen still had that killer edge, that killer bite, making overtakes on Lewis Hamilton, an awesome bit of scrapping with Lewis Hamilton, pushing aside the incident with Williams, the most interesting thing Williams have done all season. Sorry, Williams fans, got to have my Williams dig in somewhere in each video on this channel. I might as well talk about that incident. 5-second penalty for Robert Kubica. Fair play, to be totally honest with you. It's not a mistake you usually see in modern Formula 1 at unsafe release. I can understand Williams probably expected Kubica to not move back onto the pit lane. Hence is such is the way of the Brazil pit exit. Kubica could have almost cut the corner and maybe gone side by side a little bit, but even so, they're not in the same race. If that was Hamilton, Verstappen, you could kind of understand why they would do it, but sorry, Williams, I don't think you're in the race for the lead on this particular occasion, so completely understand. Really good job from Max for keeping his cool, channeling any frustration into an awesome overtake on Lewis Hamilton. Just that whole battle. It's always great to see Hamilton versus Verstappen, but to the level it was this weekend was brilliant to see. And in the closing stages, where just chaos was exploding everywhere, Verstappen was that constant, always leading, always seemed to be in control. And in races like that, not always the leader you have faith in, but Verstappen on that occasion totally deserved the race win this weekend. Awesome job. P2... Pierre Gasly? Am I reading this correct? Pierre Gasly, P2, Carlos Sainz P3, Honda Power and a McLaren on the podium. Poor Fernando Alonso, hey? Poor guy, blimey. What a 12 months that's been for both Honda and for McLaren. Both Toro Rosso and McLaren have had pretty awesome years in 2019. For Gasly, who's had a difficult year. Obviously, the whole Red Bull saga and the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, an even bigger heartache for him for sure. To bounce back from all of that, to not only get the podium P2 as well this weekend, but to put in the regular stellar performances that he's done for Toro Rosso. I didn't expect it when he returned. I really thought he would struggle, but he's jumped back into that car and I think has perhaps done better than he did last season for Toro Rosso. And you think now, yeah, he could be a driver that would be on the podium for Red Bull. It just didn't work out for him for whatever reason at that team. So I'm really happy for him. Drove a really strong race. Before the safety cars, I was thinking, you know what, Gasly comfortably at the front of that midfield, not too far off the leaders in the early stages, closer to the likes of Albon than he was to Raikkonen in the first 20 or so laps. I was thinking him for driver of the day, but a sniff of a podium when Hamilton did his pit stop late on. Then it went away from him and you're thinking, oh no, Gasly, please, I'm so sorry for you, buddy. But then kept on going, kept on persevering, got it in the end. And not only was he on the podium, P2, a massive points haul for him in the championship. I believe he's now 7th. It's a little bit strange. Again, I'm not doing graphics for this because it's absolute carnage and it will take a few days for all the penalties, all the standings to be ironed out. But to be even in contention for 6th overall, something I didn't expect a few races ago, is an awesome job. The other man in contention for 6th, who I believe is now 6th in the driver's standings, Carlos Sainz. What a year this man is continually having. I will keep saying this because I very rarely get predictions correct. Well, it's not really a prediction, but last year I defended my heart out for Carlos Sainz. I didn't think he was that bad, and yet I got ridiculed in the comments. After his podium in Brazil, I feel a little bit smug. Apologies. I'll be running back to those comments at the end of last season and saying, ha, told you so. No, on a more serious note, an awesome job this weekend. P20 to the podium. That's ridiculous. Even drivers in Ferraris, Red Bulls, Mercedes haven't been able to do that on occasions this year. Okay, there was carnage going off, so understandably it's a little bit different under the circumstances, but to keep his cool throughout that Grand Prix, the Chile master himself, fair play to him. Fair play. One of the drivers I feel most deserves a podium out of the guys who haven't got a podium on the grid in 2019 after his season he's had, if that makes sense. But couldn't be happier for him and for McLaren as well. P4 and P5, this is perhaps even more strange. The two Alfa Romeo boys, Kimi Raikkonen P4 hasn't scored a point in the second half of the year. Giovinazzi P5, comfortably his best in Formula 1. Alfa Romeo, I'd say for the past 5 Grand Prix, have been nowhere. Right at the back of the field with Haas and Williams. So, to get this result, fair play. Absolutely fair play to them. I don't think it changes much in the Constructors' Championship, but even so, what a boost that is for both Raikkonen and Giovinazzi going into next year. Didn't put a foot wrong, either of them, all weekend. And that's a big chunk of points for the team. Next up, P6, Daniel Ricciardo. How's he got P6 then? I feel I'm saying this for a lot of drivers. How on earth did he end up there? Had that contact with Magnussen early on in the race. I've got to agree, it is a penalty. Magnussen left the room, I feel, and you know what? If he'd have pushed Magnussen off, but Magnussen had kept on going, I don't think it would be a penalty. But because it really did screw over Magnussen's whole entire race, I understand with the penalty, and I agree with the penalty. Don't always say that on the channel, but Ricciardo, a really good recovery drive. Had to change strategy, but that's really good job from the Renault boys, making that work after that early contact and front wing change. P7, Lewis Hamilton, a penalty, a rare penalty, and for the second time this year, is outside the top 5. You don't usually say that about Lewis Hamilton, but you know what? Not a bad race from the champ. Not a brilliant race either. Obviously had that brilliant fight with Max Verstappen. Wasn't happy with the tyres, tried to make strategy work. I think the Red Bull was the car to beat this particular weekend, but then late on, I've got to talk about it. Contact with Alex Albon. Was smacked with a 5-second penalty, which lost him, took him away from the podium. Gave it to Carlos Sainz. Do I agree with the podium? That's going to be the controversial one. Look, full disclosure, I've not seen the onboards of Hamilton or Albon. It's a corner where you do go wide and cut back, so it seems like you're opening the door, but you shut it. Albon could have gone more defensive, so I'm a little bit 50-50. However, the big game changer here is in Parc Ferme. Hamilton straight away says, look, hold my hands up. It was my fault, my error. And you know what? Full respect for Lewis Hamilton to do that. You very rarely see that in Formula 1, in sport in general. So, mad respect for Lewis Hamilton to owning up to that mistake. But also I feel, well, if he's owning up to it, why are they taking so long with the decision? Why don't we have the Chili Master on the podium? I don't know. Anyway, it's a penalty. P7, points in the end, but hey, does it make a fat lot of difference? He's won the championship. Mercedes have won the championship. Bottas is guaranteed P2. Straightforward day. I can skip a few of these drivers because, let's be honest, Formula 1 don't like to show us a fat lot on TV. So Sergio Perez, Lando Norris, Danny Kvyat did what they all do best. Start outside the top 10, have quiet races, but get the job done. All of them scoring points. And you know what? In a championship, which especially Perez, Kvyat, who else is in that battle? Kimi Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Hülkenberg is so close. All of those drivers could do a complete switcheroo in the last weekend. So for all of them, points are necessary at the moment. And on a weekend like this where things were a little bit crazy, just keeping your cool, keeping your calm, really got the job done. Outside the top 10, Kevin Magnussen, P11, the two Haas cars through to Q3 in qualifying, Grosjean P8. For Christ's sake, awesome job. Race didn't go their way. K-Mag was behind Grosjean, went back in a few spaces on the opening few laps. Contact with Ricciardo really didn't help his race, and it was a quiet day for K-Mag for the majority of it. It was only late on when the two safety cars came into play he really got a chance, but with penalties looming, points could potentially still be on offer for Kevin Magnussen. However, probably more interesting is that P12, George Russell, if there's penalties, could score points for Williams. Now, look, these looming penalties, I'm not too sure they would. I don't think anyone will get penalties, but to be on the safe side, we've got to assume it's a possibility. So Williams potentially could score more points in 2019. Kind of fingers crossed for them, but hey, the car's rubbish. They wouldn't expect points anyway. Quiet day for them. A pretty good ding-dong between Kubica and Russell. But apart from that, not much to say. Romain Grosjean, you'd have seen on Twitter, if you follow me, cheeky plug. I wasn't happy with Haas. Tried the overcut. They always try the overcut. It never works. Grosjean lost a heap of positions. And then the golden chance, the golden opportunity came. Everyone had done 2 stops except Grosjean. Safety car came out. So you think logically, bring him in. Free pit stop. They didn't. He got absolutely swamped on the restart. He did have some kind of power unit issue. But even so, that's a rookie mistake from Haas. And this was a weekend where a tiny little mistake like that can make such a big difference. I believe they could have been on the podium if things had gone their way this weekend, if they'd just been more safe. Not even safe with strategy, just sensible with strategy. I was wound up about it, okay? They should have stopped him for a second time. They eventually did under the second safety car, but it was too late. It had already gone by then, finished behind Russell, but considering Grosjean was P7 for a good chunk of the race, I feel that was one of his better races in 2019. A bit of a redeeming race, I feel. A bit of a redeeming weekend for Romain Grosjean, I feel. Anyway, no points. Behind him, Alex Albon. Quiet first half, really came into his own in the second half. A brilliant fight with Sebastian Vettel on the restart. Had a sniff of a podium. Snatched away from Lewis Hamilton, of all people. Again, I don't think it was a mega incident. I don't think it was a mega mistake from Lewis. But for Alex, the podium was so close, yet so far. But he's got plenty of time. I think it's another strong weekend from him. First half, a little bit quiet, and I was thinking, oh, I think he really needs to start pushing on and showing what he can do against the top 5. And actually, in the second half of the race, he did exactly that. So, still growing. I believe this is his 8th race for Red Bull. Maybe his 9th race, which isn't a fat lot. Still give him time. He's in his rookie year, but I think another good weekend from Albon. Hulkenberg, P15. That's pretty much all I can say on Hulkenberg. Robert Kubica, the final finisher, P16. Again, I spoke about the incident in the pit lane. That's all I can really say on that. Your non-finishers, Valtteri Bottas, uncharacteristically slow, I kind of want to say. Perhaps that's a little bit harsh, but I feel a better way of putting it is I'm a little bit disappointed with Valtteri's weekend. You know, coming off that win in the US, a circuit where Hamilton's usually so good, just didn't go the way that Valtteri would have wanted. In Brazil, was not on the pace in quali, in practice, in the race was more of in a fight with Albon than he was with the top 4. I don't know. I mean, he's got P2 and maybe that's on the back of his mind a little bit that he doesn't need to win. But I thought maybe US would ignite a bit of fire in his belly, in his tum-tum, and really push him forward. But it didn't. And ending up with a power unit failure of some sort, which eventually did kick the race into high gear, 6th gear. But for Valtteri, a weekend to forget, I think is a good way of putting it. Lance Stroll, caught up in debris late on, suspension failure. The debris he got caught up with is the final thing I need to talk about. Ferrari. Doing what Ferrari do best is when things are looking good, it never ends up being good. And never say never with Ferrari. Even if it's looking perfect, something will always happen. A contact between the two drivers. If you'd have seen the damage, you'd have thought a combine harvester would have gone into the side of Charles Leclerc's car. But no, the tiniest little bump between the two of them down the second straight, the second DRS zone, if you want to call it that. Absolute calamity. At least one of them was on for the podium, and yet ended up with no points whatsoever. And now it looks like Verstappen is pretty much confirmed to be 3rd in the Drivers' Championship. What a mess. And I was streaming with the F1 Word, and Sean fully believes Vettel's fault, 100%. I mean, if you're going to put the blame at anyone's door, it's Vettel. There is a little kink, a little turn slightly to the left, which causes the contact. But even then, we've seen far bigger contacts. Even the Ricciardo Magnussen impacts have a much less of an impact. But that's the way of Formula 1. Vettel, who had been overtaken a few seconds before by Leclerc, an awesome move by Leclerc through turn 1, you kind of just think, oh, maybe you should have just conceded the position. Surely, maybe. Leclerc was on new tyres, I don't know. A year to forget for Ferrari. A year of change for Ferrari. I'm looking forward to really just dissecting their season over the winter. I think that'll be fun because there's lots to talk about with Ferrari. So much change within that team. But yes, not the best way to end a weekend. I've quite enjoyed this video. A little bit more laid back. I don't know. Leave your thoughts below. Driver of the day. I will leave you with that. That's always fun. Obvious candidates. Carlos Sainz. Max Verstappen. I think the two Alpha boys drove a strong race. I've got to give it to Pierre Gasly. Mainly because in that first half of the race, I was still thinking, yeah, I think I'm going to give it to Gasly. And that second half of the race, he just kicked it into gear even more. Awesome job. But to be honest with you, any of those drivers I just named could be in the mix. Even Romain Grosjean wasn't awful today. But not as good as Gasly, Sainz and Verstappen. They're my top 3. Team of the day. I'm trying to think what I usually do on my graphics. Team of the day, Alfa Romeo or Red Bull. Red Bull I didn't expect to have the outright quickest car, but for Alfa Romeo, what a boost that is for them. Overtake of the day, I tell you what, Carlos Sainz's move on Sergio Perez in those early stages was a dirty move. Love that one. Awesome from Carlos. That move alone was deserving of a podium. Verstappen made some brilliant moves. Hamilton made a lovely move on the outside of Albon. Leclerc made a great move on Vettel. It was just a really good race. And even though the first half was a little bit strategical based, I've said that so weird, but you know what I'm going for. It was a strategy that was the key player. Few overtakes, midfield battle was good. That second half made it a special Grand Prix and a race we will remember. So, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I don't know, maybe in hindsight I might give it an 8. I'm between an 8 or a 9, but right now, with that special result, giving it a 9 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. A little bit different this weekend, but hey, hopefully you enjoyed. If you're new around here, this isn't how things usually go, but it is this weekend. So I hope you've enjoyed, and if you are new and you made it this far, feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.